Hi, my name is Pat, and this is my channel, Book Chat with Pat, and I'm glad that you're here. Today will be my fourth and final, for now, Poetry Thursday devoted to Irish poetry in support of March's Irish Readathon. This month, I've presented a bit of poetry from Seamus Heaney, Padre O'Tuma, and Louis MacNeice. Today, for the last Thursday in March, I'd like to share a little bit about the great Irish poet William Butler Yeats, one of the greatest poets of the 20th century. I know that I will not be able to do justice to this literary giant in a little video here, but I would like to provide at least a short introduction. So a little bit about Yeats first. He was born in Dublin in 1865. His family was part of the Protestant Anglo-Irish minority that had controlled the political and economic life of Ireland since the 17th century. Yeats' father, John Butler Yeats, was a barrister who became a portrait painter. His mother, Susan, was part of a wealthy merchant family from Sligo. Yeats' family moved to London when he was just 2 years old, and he spent much of his childhood in London. The family lived in London from 1867 through 1881. Young William did, however, spend his summers in Sligo with his grandparents, and he always felt deeply connected to his Irish roots. Yeats attended high school in Dublin and then the Metropolitan School of Art, also in Dublin, where he met many artists and poets of the day. The family moved back to London in 1887, and Yeats became involved in the literary scene there. His poetry, though, always reflected his Irish roots, and he demonstrated a great interest in Irish legends and folk heroes. He also developed an interest in occultism and spiritualism, and even belonged to a secret society interested in ritual magic. In 1889, Yeats met Maud Gonne, who was the great love of his life and his muse for much of his writing. Gonne was of Anglo-Irish descent, like Yeats, but she joined the cause of Irish nationalism early on and was an active and vocal proponent of home rule and eventually of the Republic declared in 1916. Yeats would propose to her at least 3 times and was always rejected. She is the inspiration for many of his poems, from his second book of poetry all the way to his final book, Last Poems. Maud Gonne respected and admired Yeats, but she was never in love with him. Yeats himself probably joined the Irish nationalist cause first out of his love for Maud Gonne. She later married Major John McBride, an Irish soldier who shared her feelings about the Irish cause, and her marriage to McBride also prompted several of Yeats's poems. Yeats would eventually marry Georgie Hyde Lees, and they had a daughter in 1919 and a son in 1921. Upon the foundation of the Irish Free State in 1922, Yeats became a member of the new Irish Senate, where he served for 6 years. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. Yeats is the first of 4 Irish writers to win this prestigious award, the others being G.B. Shaw, Samuel Beckett, and Seamus Heaney. Yeats died in France in 1939, and he was buried there due to the onset of World War II, though his body was eventually brought back to Sligo in 1948 after the war, and he is buried in a churchyard at Drumcliff. The body of work of W.B. Yeats is vast. I've selected just a few of his shorter and most famous poems to read today. Yeats' earliest poems have some echoes of the 19th century British Romantic poets. Lake Isle of Innisfree is an early poem, probably his first poem to become famous, from one of his early collections. He describes here a pastoral setting in Sligo from his childhood. We hear echoes of the early Romantic poets in his expression of his desire to leave the complexities of life and return to a simpler time and place close to nature. He ultimately concludes that the return can take place through the imagination and through the revival of memories. Okay, so I'm going to read from this this book of collected poems of W.B. Yeats. I showed this in another video. This volume is I've had this for about 45 years. It was a college text that I've held on to. Okay, so the Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There's midnights all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and an evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always, night and day, I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray, I hear it in the deep heart's core. The second poem that I would like to read, No Second Troy, is a good example of a poem inspired by his muse and great love, Maud Gonne. In this case, Maud Gonne has just married John McBride. So Yeats acknowledges here his complex feelings for this woman that he cannot have. He says that he cannot blame her for the misery that he feels. She has power over men, over him, and over all of the revolutionaries that she has inspired to the Irish cause. By comparing Maud Gonne to Helen of Troy, Yeats suggests that she is both the beautiful object of men's desire and also a force of powerful destruction. No Second Troy. Why should I blame her that she filled my days with misery, or that she would of late have taught to ignorant men most violent ways, or hurled the little streets upon the great, had they but courage equal to desire. What could have made her peaceful with a mind that nobleness made simple as a fire, with beauty like a tightened bow, a kind that is not natural in an age like this, being high and solitary and most stern? Why, what could she have done, being what she is? Was there another Troy for her to burn? A later poem, also one of Yeats's most famous and probably the one most frequently quoted, is The Second Coming. This is a poem that offers a disturbing modernist vision of the world and its future. Here, Yeats addresses the sense of despair and disillusionment that many felt after World War I. Yeats had written a book of prose called A Vision, in which he attempted to provide a framework for his theories on human experience, history, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Here he describes his ideas about human history moving in 2,000-year cycles. He saw the Greco-Roman civilization as having been brought to a close by the advent of Christianity. In the violence of his own times in the 20th century, he believed that humanity was seeing signs that the 2,000-year cycle was spinning out of control and was about to be replaced by a system that would be its opposite. This is what he is describing in The Second Coming, where the phrase second coming usually has connotations suggesting the return of a Messiah. The figure that Yeats describes as awakening in this poem is not a savior, but rather an ominous beast. He offers a bleak vision here of a nightmarish future. Okay. The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image out of spiritus mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. So that is too dark a poem on which to end my Irish poetry series. I will leave you instead with an earlier poem, When You Are Old, written in 1893. This is something of an adaptation of a French sonnet that was written by the 16th century poet Pierre de Ronsard. In Yeats's adaptation, the speaker, a young man, addresses the woman he loves. Critics think this is another Maud Gonne poem. He tells the woman to return to the poetry that he has written for her when she is old and gray, as a way of remembering her earlier beauty and how much she was loved. The speaker knows that his love is unrequited, but he hopes that his devotion, expressed in his poetry, will bring her comfort in her old age. Okay. When you are old. When you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. So I've just scratched the surface of the poetry of William Butler Yeats. I thank you for joining me on this brief glimpse into the work of a few great Irish poets. I would like to continue Poetry Thursday if there's interest, as I would like to feature many other poets writing in English in future episodes. And with April being National Poetry Month, I would also like to share a few of my favorite poems throughout the month in a variety of different ways. As always, I thank you for watching. I hope that you're doing well. I'll speak with you again soon. Take care.